Isn't it frustrating when you're working at your computer and an error message appears on the screen and forces you to stop what you're doing? When a bug happens, our program keeps running, but it behaves in the way we didn't intend. When an error happens, our program stops running as the result of an error. In this video, you will learn about bugs and errors in JavaScript and some of the common error types, such as syntax, reference, and type errors. Suppose you have created a function that you pass two numbers. The function adds the two numbers and outputs the result. Next, you call the function and add another console log to the next line, where you will output the string still running. When you run the code, the number 3 will output. Then, JavaScript will happily continue on to the next line of code and console log the string still running. This is because our example code contains no errors. When the function is called, the code is executed and then moved to the next line. While this code works as expected, what if you pass to the function some varying data types, such as a string and a number? For example, a string of 1 and a number of 2. For this, recall how concatenation works. Due to JavaScript coercion, when you add a string and number using concatenation with the plus operator, the values will concatenate as strings. Thus, the result is a string of 12. Our function is now no longer adding numbers. Instead, it is concatenating strings. However, JavaScript happily continues executing the code, outputs the string of 12, and console logs the words still running. Notice that our program is working without interruption. However, it is not working how we intended it to work. This is what's referred to as a bug, as it makes our code behave unexpectedly. But it continues to work. So, how does an error differ from a bug? Well, let's explore another scenario. Suppose you had simple programming that has two statements. The first uses console log to output C plus D, and the second one uses console log to output the statement, "This line never runs." What if these two lines of code were the only lines of code in our program? Where would JavaScript find the values of the variables C and D? Well, it wouldn't, because in the sample code these variables don't exist. They have neither been declared or assigned. It would look for the variables of C and D. Since they don't exist, JavaScript outputs a reference error. This type of error occurs when a value is not defined, but you attempt to use it in your code. When an error happens, our program stops executing the code as a direct consequence. No further lines of code are executed. In JavaScript and some other programming languages, we say that an error is thrown. So, an error can be defined as a faulty piece of code that prevents the program from further execution. An error gets thrown and the program stops. JavaScript does its best with reporting error by outputting an error message to the console. This error reporting is useful because it narrows down the issue with our code. In JavaScript, there are many error types, and some of the most common are syntax error, type error, and reference error. You have just learned about reference error, so let's explore syntax error and type error briefly now. A syntax error occurs when you write a piece of code that JavaScript cannot read. For example, if you declare a variable and assign it a value of a string but forget one of the closing quotation symbols. Alternatively, suppose you try to run an array method on a number. For example, the pop method. In this example, a type error would be reported. Uncaught type error, 5.pop is not a function. You've now learned about bugs and errors and the differences between them. You've also learned about some of the common kinds of errors and how JavaScript helps you catch these by outputting error messages. It's a fact that programming errors will almost certainly occur every time you write code. Next, you'll learn about some of the different JavaScript tools used to catch these errors.